the plan is to balance the live streams with the interviews.
That's right. Let's do an interview segment.
Let's do an interview segment.
I think it's time for an interview.
Who are you?
My name is Mike.
I'm Dave, and this
Welcome
is
to the Multiverse.
Yeah, we'll get that. So this segment is going to be one of our interview segments. It's going to be taped, and basically we want to interview interesting people that we meet in the multiverse. And so a good friend of mine, Jason, was gracious enough to join our show to be our very first guest on Mike and Dave's Humans of the Multiverse. And he's a good buddy of mine. I worked with him at one of the largest nonprofit organizations that helps veterans in the country, if not the largest. And we got to know each other really well there. And I just think he's a really interesting guy, really passionate about what he does, a really good father and a really outstanding friend. So I thought we'd bring him on to talk. And without further ado, let's bring on Jason. There, hey, buddy, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey, Jason, man, I'm Mike. It's good to meet you.
This is my buddy Mike, by the way.
Good to meet you too, man.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. You're literally our first guest on Mike and Dave's Humans of the Multiverse. So how do you feel about that?
Hey, pretty cool.
Awesome. You at work right now, or what are you up to?
Work from home on Mondays and Fridays. So
nice. I did want to ask you a little bit about the new job, but that's kind of towards the end of the interview. So
sure. I probably won't mention the location just because I haven't had permission to.
Sure.
And I wanted in general.
And I wanted to ask, what do you think about WWP? Probably the same thing, right? Because
be safe.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I wasn't sure, but we're not going to talk shit about WWP or anything. So I just wanted to ask you about your experience in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, all right, cool, awesome. Anything else you don't want us to touch or what?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Good. And then go ahead, Mike. You're up first.
All right. Well, Jason, can you tell us who you are and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, my name's Jason Bush, and I work with wounded, ill, and injured veterans, and I have been now for the last almost 13 years.
Wow, dang, 13 years. That's longer than you were serving in the military, right?
Yes, much longer.
How long? So you were in the Marines, right?
Yes. Okay. I was active duty from 1998 to the end of 2003.
And to the end of 2003, 1990 to the end of 2003. So you joined before 9/11.
I did.
Okay. One of my questions was going to be, what did 9/11, was that a catalyst for you joining? So what was the catalyst for you joining the Marines?
So to be honest, ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a firefighter medic. And growing up in South Florida, departments didn't have their own academies at the time, so you had to go to a local community college. And there was a waiting list 2 to 3 years long. And by the time I graduated, I still wasn't even halfway through with that waiting list. So a few of my friends went in the military. And the Marines, to be specific, and I really respected them and the pride that they had for the country and their service. And I thought, hey, why don't I give it a shot? I was probably the last person in the world you'd think would be able to successfully even finish Marine Corps boot camp. But it just took a whole lot of heart and sure will. And so I did. August of 98, I left for Paris Island and then went to infantry school after that, and then MOS school, and then was stationed with their battalion Marines out of Kent, Pennsylvania, as an infantry battalion.
Cool. So speaking of Paris Island, I'm going to share my screen a little bit here for a second, and I want you to get on a scale of 1 to 10 How accurate is this? Okay. All right. Waited 1 second.
Okay.
Get there. That's not it. Wait 1 second. All right. I'm going to screen share right now. Share.
Chaplain Charlie will tell you about how the free world will conquer communism with the aid of God and a few Marines. God has a hard-on for Marines because we kill everything we see. He plays his games, we play ours. To show our appreciation for so much power, we keep heaven packed with fresh souls. God was here before the Marine Corps, so you can give your heart to Jesus, but your ass belongs to the Corps. Do you ladies understand?
Sir, yes, sir!
I can't hear you.
Sir, yes, sir!
Chaplain Charlie.
So, and I only bring that up because when I first moved to the U.S. from Canada to join the military, I saw a commercial of this Marine, and he was like climbing a mountain. And when he got to the top, he was like in his dress blues, and he like fought a
rock
dragon
monster
and
or
stuff.
dragon, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. So then my dad's like, wait a second, let's watch Full Metal Jacket first. And so I watched Full Metal Jacket, and I was like, I think I'm gonna join the Army, Dad. So how accurate is that? And like, do you have any funny stories from basic training or anything?
Well, it's pretty darn accurate. And the fact that Lee Ermey was in fact a Marine and a drill instructor in real life at one point. Those barracks, that squad bay that they were in was actually the weapons training battalion squad bays that we stayed in when we went to the rifle range for 2 weeks.
Oh wow!
So even the location was accurate. But funny stories. I don't know if anybody when they set their feet on those yellow footprints said, "Wow, I made the right decision." I'm sure there's a lot that did, but I was one of those that said, "Oh my gosh, what the heck did I do?"
What did I do?
And then first phase is first phase, and probably a good part of second phase is just tearing you down, making you feel like you're just nothing, so they can build you back up and form you into the exact warrior that they want you to be. And it makes sense.
You said
I
that
think that the Marines.
you said that you would be one of the last people you'd expect. Why is that? What made you feel less likely to succeed maybe over that first hurdle?
I wasn't an athlete. I was an outdoors guy. Just because anything with a ball, till this day I can't play. I'm not a very athletic person. So, in most people's opinion, to you have the best physically and that. And while our standards are extremely high, probably some of the highest, I think that they have a unique ability of making anybody into a Marine if they just have an ounce of soul and heart to do it. I think it's after I got through boot camp, I was like, that was next to impossible. But if I could do it, anybody could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably maybe a unique trait that I had that I didn't realize that I had is a no quit attitude,
Mm-hmm.
and a heck of a lot of heart, and the desire to not quit and let anything beat me.
Yeah, I bet you saw some like people who maybe were more athletic than you, or more fit than you, or more quit.
And
Literally quit.
Yeah. We started with over 60, and we finished with I think 51.
Yeah.
So So that was pretty incredible. And I never shot a rifle in my life. So they were able to make me into the marksman they wanted me to be. And I didn't have any, bad habits from hunting with my dad or anything like that. So, over the course of 5 years, I was, fifth ward expert, qualifying with iron sights at 500 yards. So, which to me is a pretty big deal. Not to
No,
boast.
that's a big deal to me because I'm a medic and I can barely shoot. I swear sometimes somebody was in another lane shooting targets down for me just so we could go home. I'm just kidding, but I'm always impressed with people who can shoot because it's not something that I was very good at. Was there anything else that you felt like you were good at as a Marine besides shooting?
I think I already had attention to detail and was very kind of particular. So showing attention to detail in everything I did was that kind of came natural to me. The physical stamina, that was something that had to be built, and the strength that was something that had to be built and would continue being built.
Yeah, me and you are exact opposite on that because I came into basic training the fastest guy there, but like with absolutely zero attention to detail. As you know from working with me for 3 or 4 years, I'm a bit of a scatterbrain. Mike learned that about me earlier this week, but it was the opposite for me. The hard part was like, not forgetting stuff and getting everyone in trouble for me. And the easy part, around and climbing stuff, but it's just interesting, like you said, how they're able to just take all these different people with different shapes and sizes and strengths and skill sets and abilities and mold them into, this team with a singular mission. And in your particular case, that mission ended up being deploying to Iraq for the invasion, correct?
Yep.
And so I kind of
several, yeah. Yeah. So we, I guess you could say we're fortunate enough to have several real world situations prior to Iraq, which made us, when we got to Iraq, had all been together for 5 years. So we were a well-oiled machine. And, my first deployment, we did a humanitarian operation in East Timor, who was in the Civil War, with West Timor. And then we were with the USS Cole when they were bombed. And so we spent probably the better part of 2.5 months at the USS Cole's side, providing security in the Gulf of Aden and on different ships that were still there, recovery efforts, security at the airport where the Cole was there picking up munitions. To continue their journey. So that was something. And September 11th happened, and I was supposed to get out August 23rd of 2000.
Wow.
And we were set to go on deployment again right about when September 11th happened. And I wanted to be able to get another one under my belt. So I extended my enlistment voluntarily, added 6 months to it, which ended up being Operation Enduring Freedom. And where 1-1 went to Afghanistan, 3-1, we went all over in the Middle East and spent the summer of 2000. Let's see, the fall of 2001 and the summer of 2002 in the Horn of Africa and Jordan, different places. We were attacked on Farlaka Island by some terrorists, and we lost a guy there. And
geography.
Farlaka Island, it's an island off the coast of Kuwait.
Okay.
And then I was supposed to get out in January of 2003, but I went home on leave first for Christmas of 2002, and while we were home on leave, we got a call that said, "Hey, you need to come back. We might be going to war." And we're like, "Well, I'm supposed to get out." So I had already brought home all my personal effects, my vehicle. I drove it across the country and went back. And they said, "Hey, we're likely going to be the tip of the spear because we're the most well-oiled machine." And over the next week or so, I guess they decided that we were going to go. So we drove all of our stuff down to Naval Base in San Diego, loaded our ships, and they said, "Guess what? Your stop loss. You're not going."
That's what I was just going to ask. Did you get the infamous stop loss? So, Mike, what a stop loss is essentially at the beginning of the OIF and OEF, they basically say, "Sorry, you're not getting out. We're extending you for 2 weeks or 2 years, I mean," and then they deploy you to people who are about to get out. So I actually didn't know that Jason was stop lost. How did you feel about that?
That's what I got for volunteering to
6
stay
months
for
voluntary extension turns into multi-years when something like that takes place.
Yep. Okay. We did about 18 months long.
So your voluntary one turned into an extra one because you got stop loss. Man,
and I'm actually curious a bit before we go too far past 03. Jog my memory, sort of what transpired between 9/11, 2001, 2003 when the invasion of Iraq began. Surely things were heating up throughout 2002 when you were in the Jordan area. What was going on at that time?
Yeah, we were all over in the Middle East, and like I said, where we spent the longest was in the Horn of Africa because apparently there was terroristic activity there, and an area for a lot of terrorists, like Djibouti, Somalia, Ethiopia, like it was just right there, just across the water from Yemen and all the other Middle Eastern countries. So so we did a couple small operations, but didn't have any combat engagement per se. We were done at that time. Marines did 6-month deployments. And East Coast Marines went to the Mediterranean in the Middle East. West Coast Marines went to the South Pacific and Indonesia, Asian areas, and the Indian Ocean and the Middle East. And we had gotten back with I guess at the time, those of us that weren't up high and seeing what was the possibility. I don't even remember if they said there was a possibility that Iraq would kick off. I don't know. But I know it was a surprise when they said to come back. You're not getting out.
Okay. I'm going back to in my mind, to where I was at that time, like in my life. I was still living in Canada. I remember watching on the news sort of the whole shock and awe operation in Iraq, which was, we were all watching it just like light up the sky. Mike was probably 10 years old at the time. Like, where were you during when we were all watching that on TV?
So we were just south of the Iraqi border. We floated in Kuwait probably, I would say early to mid-February. I mean, we were balls of the wall the whole way across the Pacific. It was just this big gray wall of just firepower moving across the Pacific. And we got there pretty quick. We set up and we were sitting just maybe a mile or two south of the Iraq border. And I remember March 19th being the day that we had gotten our marching orders and moved right up to the border. And then sometime between the 19th and the 21st is when we actually invaded, even though the history books say the 21st. I have my little Green Monster book otherwise, unless I thought it was a different day than it was, but that's how I have it written down.
Well, history is written
we can hear and see jets flying.
I remember that week, but it was a spring semester, my 6th grade year, and my English teacher would turn on the news.
Wow. Yeah, I guess I was going to ask this since anyway, but where were you, Jason, when 9/11 did happen? You were already in the Marines. Where were you?
I was Yeah, I was getting up. I was already in E4, so I was on barracks duty for the day, and it was just about 5 in the morning, and I was getting up, and my folks who are on the East Coast, they called me and said, "Turn the news on. We're being attacked." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? Like, you've really lost your mind."
Who would attack?
And yeah, turn the TV on and saw it, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And they shut the base down and gave everybody, issued everybody if you were on duty, issued everybody a weapon and it was loaded, and it had serious, orders, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. Guys that lived off base with their families, they weren't able to leave base for, I don't know, I want to say like a week or more. And nobody could leave, nobody could come on. Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Because I was in Canada, and there was I had no even intention of joining the military. Little did I know that 3 years later I'd be in the same place you were. But this isn't about me, it's about you. And I wanted to, before we move on to Mike, wanted to ask you some questions about your after military career. But before we move on, I wanted to ask any funny stories from Iraq, like some of the stuff that really that I really try to stand out from let's stand out from my deployment were funny things that I did with my friends and silly things, jokes we had. I remember you telling me one, and if you don't feel like telling it, it's okay, but something about you guys getting soap for the first time in forever, and trucks are driving
get
by.
The shower?
Yeah.
Oh no! My first funny story is about that. We hadn't invaded yet, and I guess the engineers, combat engineers, had built this berm up around us, and we had these two pallets, a pallet on the ground to stand on, and a pallet on either side. And I'm standing there with a 5-gallon jerry can, like it's been a week or two, and I'm taking this shower and stuff, kind of a shower, and all of a sudden this big convoy of Amtrak's pull up on the berm, and I'm just sitting there in my glory, and they're all up, and they're like, "Hell yeah!" And they get out their little disposable cameras, and they're taking pictures and stuff, and I'm like, "Here you go, enjoy." Yeah.
But what I found so funny about that story is that somewhere on someone's disposable camera is Jason's Dirty Bird, probably on more than one.
Yeah.
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 Somebody's grandkid is going to be going through that. They're going to find it in the attic, and then there's Jason's glory.
Yeah. And then another time we invaded March 19th, 21st-ish, and it was probably not until after Easter time frame. So it'd been a good month and a half. I just remember where we were during Easter. So it was at least a month or more since we'd had a shower, and our NBC team had set up a Senator, which is like a pump over a well that was
NBC is nuclear, biological, and chemical, for those who don't know.
Oh, thank you. And so there's a picture of us, 2 pages worth in a book. It's called "So Many Hours or So Many Miles to Baghdad," and there's a panoramic picture of about 40 or 50 Marines' asses with this hose hanging over us, raining down water, and all of our rifles are stacked. And we're having this big group shower, and it was the most wonderful thing. And then that's when you really found out, who had tattoos in places that you probably never seen before, whether it was on their ass cheek or a tramp stamp or whatever. And I remember we had this gunnery sergeant who was a badass, and he had a freaking rose tattooed right on his ass cheek, and we gave him shit for that. We gave him shit for that for months after that. And like, "You're not so hard. You have a rose on your ass cheek." But I mean, I remember our clothes could stand up on their own. They were just so full of dirt and grime and
Sweat. Good time.
Yeah, man.
And so you were in Iraq for 6 months. You came home. And life was harder than you thought, huh? After you got back.
Yes. 'Cause when I was in, my folks, they left where I grew up, and they came to where we are now. And so when I came home, not only did I come home to a different world as it would be if I went home to where I grew up, it was even more different because I didn't know anybody, and I thought I was fine, and I very much wasn't. And the struggle would begin. But in the middle of that struggle, I had landed the career of my dreams with a metro area fire department, and others that were in my class had waited years there also, believe it or not, because it was probably one of the best departments in the nation, busiest. Um, and so people really at one time waited to get into it, and I didn't tell them that I just walked on. I just walked into the county office one day and accidentally walked into the CEO's office of this county, and he brought me to the police and fire recruiter. And I mean, I had to take a written exam, but then that just got me on the list. And little did I know I'd be starting, I think like April 4th or 6th of 2004. So I was out of work for, I had terminal leave for, which is, you take all your days that you have saved up, max of 60, and you can leave and you can get paid for 2 months, as if you were still in. And I got a little part-time job here and there, and then I started my career as a firefighter medic in April of 2004.
So it was all going according to plan anyway at that point, right?
Yes.
Wait a minute now. How do you plan? How do you accidentally walk into the CEO's office?
That's a great question. I didn't know where I was. I'd never been here. I just pushed a button on the elevator, and the elevator door opened to the foyer of his office, and there wasn't a
Push the top
receptionist or anything. So I just walked in looking for somebody.
tip top button.
Yeah.
Button.
There he was
That
with his feet on his desk smoking a cigarette.
That's rather serendipitous, is it not?
Yeah.
That's strange because otherwise it may not have ever happened.
Correct. And during that time, I had started talking to an old family friend that our families had grown up together, and we started building a long distance relationship. And I made it through fire academy. I made it through the medic academy, which was the medic part was the hardest academically that I'd ever worked in my life because I'm not an
tough.
academic.
Yeah, that test is really
like
different.
books. I don't like studying. I don't like anything where I have to. I'm good at the hands-on stuff. I did great with all that stuff. It's the book stuff and the testing and all of that. And was at not only was I at one of the busiest departments in the nation, I was at the busiest station in the department. So it was like, well, and it was also 3rd Battalion. As I was in the Marine in the boot camp, I was in 3rd Battalion. In the fleet, I was 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, and I get to the fire service, and I was in 3rd Battalion. So, like, I don't know if 3 is my lucky number or what, but
that's amazing.
Really
the number 3,
yeah.
I just met someone at lunch today, and we were talking about the number 3 just a couple hours ago.
That's
so today's episode is brought to you by the number 3.
That's correct.
And actually, this is actually our 3rd episode. Literally,
kind of sorted in the grand scheme.
This
Yeah.
episode, then we did a 1st episode, and then this. So that's weird.
Wow.
We wanted to kind of transition into talking about, how you got involved with WWP, and how. And feel free to share as little or as much as you'd like, but how PTSD played a role in your own personal struggle, and then how you got into helping others.
Yeah. So, I'll try to breeze through this as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
Every 3rd day, I worked 24 on, 48 off, and it was like combat every 3rd day in a very, very rough area of town, shooting, stabbings, kids being killed, adults being killed. The fires were actually the funnest part. The hardest part was all the other traumatic BS and just the lack of humanity in the area that I worked in.
Mhm.
I craved it. I loved it. I still miss it till this day. Um, but once I got to my station out in the field, it was like October, November of 2004. 2005, I got married. And my daughter was my oldest was 8 months old when my first wife and I got married. And then by 2008, um, things were really starting to come out even more that there was something that just wasn't right with me. I mean, it was from when I got home, but the difference was is I wasn't married and didn't have children and all of that.
Mm.
So my wife at the time drugged me to the VA kicking and screaming. They diagnosed me with PTSD, depression, anxiety, a few other things, and said that I needed to, start seeing somebody. And so I did. In 2011, my doctor told me about this organization called Wounded Warrior Project. Had I ever heard of it? And I said, yeah, isn't that for folks that have been blown up and burned and missing
Physically
limbs and
wounded.
all that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she says, well, I don't think so. Maybe you should give them a call. So I gave them a call and found out that they were for invisible wounds also, which I was just learning about. So the very first thing I did with them was called a Project Odyssey, which was a rehabilitative mental health retreat in Park City, Utah, and it was the first time since I'd come home in 2003 that I realized that I wasn't alone. There's nothing magical about it. I wasn't like a new person when I left there, but what I did know that I didn't know before I got there was that I wasn't alone and there was resources. So I started over the next 2.5 years being very involved as much as I could. They decided that I'd be a good peer mentor, sent me to peer mentor training. So I started, helping out a lot and, helping other guys and girls that were dealing with the same things. And about that time, I woke up one day in 2000 and the end of 2012, actually the day after Christmas, and found myself a single father. So I was kind of forced to make a decision, and that decision was to leave the fire service. Right before I had been promoted to captain, and left something I planned on being at 30 years. And so just at the right time, I'm a huge believer, a man of faith, and I really believe that God knew what I needed when I needed it, and what my kids needed. And Wounded Warrior Project had just opened up an office in Atlanta, and so I applied to work in their alumni program. That position was filled. Kind of bummed. They called me back a few weeks later and said that they had an opening in their mental health program for this Project Odyssey. And I'm like, I don't know anything about my own. But at the time, the position was basically facilitating this uh, adventure-based, experiential learning-based type retreat. There wasn't a whole lot of mental health part with it. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I did it. And after spending just shy of 10 years in the fire service, I started with them in April of 2013, where I stayed 10 years to the day. Wasn't planning on going anywhere. I spent 8 years on the mental health team, received a lot of mental health training as the program evolved, and it was just really cool that so instrumental in my life. The struggle would continue, roller coaster, mental and emotional roller coaster in the years to come. And it got to be around 8 years, and it was really taking its toll on me because I wanted to help everybody. And, you lose guys and girls from time to time, and just really was weighing heavy on me. So I had to make a decision. And luckily, there was a position on the alumni team open. So that's basically outreach. So I spent the next 2 years doing outreach and planning fun events and, getting warriors together outside of their homes and just having fun and connecting and sharing camaraderie. And during that time, I had started building relationship with a local aquarium who was trying to start a military program. And so the guy that they had picked to do that, he wasn't military, had no military experience. So I told him, I said, hey, if you need any help, figuring out what right looks like and kind of where you want this program to go, let me know. And so I helped him kind of build it from the outside. Right before I hit 10 years at the Warrior Project, the aquarium reached out to me and said, hey, this guy is going to be leaving. Would you like to come run our military program? And I was like, oh, never really thought about that. Well, to do that, I needed to be a professional level diver, meaning a dive pro. And just so happens that I utilized the VA's Voc Rehab program to, over the course of 2 years, to get all this professional level dive stuff. I already had recreational dive experience, about 20 years. So the VA paid for me to get all this professional level dive stuff. The list is a mile long. And so I was a good candidate for them. And so through a lot of talking back and forth with them and my wife, which I got remarried in 2015 to an amazing woman. We have 5 kids together. I have 3. She had 2. And now they're all 20, 17, and 14. There's 5 of them. And so time has flown. I made the decision to take a leap of faith from Wounded Warrior Project 10 years to the day. Needless to say, they're very surprised. They figured I'd be there forever. I thought I'd be there forever too, but you just never know what opportunities may arise. So I made my way over to this aquarium in April of 2023, I guess. Yeah, I think it's 2023, and where I've been ever since. And the basis of the program is introducing injured, ill, and wounded veterans to the healing nature of the underwater world. And I've kind of made a mission statement for it and a purpose, and really have grown it a little bit since I started, with plans to grow it even more. But also take veterans to the field. And we focus on education, conservation, and service, because through those types of things, especially service, it helps being a veteran myself. It helps us to know that we have some importance and that we're doing something to still give back. So we work with organizations like the Coral Restoration Foundation, and take them diving in the Keys for a week and working on rebuilding coral reefs and all kinds of cool things like that. So every week we host a different veterans organization, and we allow them to swim in one of the world's largest single aquariums, and either swim or dive depending on their certification, and have big plans in the future. So we also serve Gold Star families, and that's pretty rewarding as well.
Cool. Jason, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on was because we're trying to talk to interesting people, and your compassion and your dedication to serving others. I've always admired very much, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. And I wanted to point out, you kind of transition from you're still in a serving role, but it's just much less stressful and much less of an impact on you personally. Is that and that seems like a lot more of a healthy space for you to be in, right?
I think so. I'd say the last 3 years of my life post combat has been probably the best 3 years so far. As you know, it's a constant. It takes constant work. I wish that one day we could wake up and say, yeah, we're healed from our past, but I just don't think that's reality. I think you get to a point where you can cope in healthy ways, and you can live a productive life. But I don't know that I don't know those scars from your past ever go away completely.
I don't think they do either, but you're right. You can learn to live with them. And I wanted to, if you wanted to leave us with some words of wisdom or anything like that, if anybody's watching who's dealing with some trauma, it doesn't have to be military.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give them?
What we know is that trauma affects everybody differently. But what we do know too is that it affects the way your brain works. the way it fires, the chemical makeup. And so if you have experienced a trauma, whether it be inside the military, outside the military, public service, and it's affecting you, that's very, very normal. You know, PTSD and depression and anxiety is a very normal reaction to a very unnormal situation. And there's tons and tons of resources out there. And it's important to never give up the fight, because there's always somebody in this world, even if you feel alone, that loves you and that needs you. And just keep fighting. Yeah.
And how do people get a hold of WWWP, Wounded Warrior Project, if they want to look at Project Odyssey or something like that?
I believe it's just woundedwarriorproject.org.
Perfect.
Simple
Perfect.
as that. Yeah, one of the best veterans organizations in the world. There's a
Yeah.
lot of good ones out there, but they're great.
Yeah, and that's where I actually met Jason. I worked at that, doing the Project Odysseys for 4 years as well. So, and I would say that, yeah, they do what a lot of other organizations don't or can't. So
If they can't,
Mike,
if they can't help you, they'll find somebody that can.
exactly. And that's the best thing, is they'll refer you out. They find somebody who can. Mike, did you have any other questions for Jason?
I think this has been great. It sounds like you're doing a really cool thing for the community. And next time I'm up in Atlanta, if I go to the aquarium, I'll be sure to give you a shout. They got a big aquarium.
Yeah, please do, man. Please do. Love to have you and show you around. You too, David.
Yeah, man, we got to get together soon.